Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Joining us tonight is our intrepid co-host and fellow traveler, Dan, the Dan Noodles Man. And as our special guest tonight is Jess from Noble Knight. Thanks, Jess, for coming by.
Always.
I've selected a topic that I thought you may have some things to say about, which is how and with what, I suppose, to introduce new folks to wargaming. And this was kind of sparked by a conversation I had on Facebook with where somebody said, I think these particular print and play games, these very small, very simple print and play games would be a great introduction to wargame. And I was like, I don't think so.
So it seems like a lot of extra work.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that was one of the points I made objecting to that, is that print and play games are a pain in the ass. I mean, I'm aware that people do it for a variety of reasons. For some people, it's like a part of the hobby is like to put print, making their own counters and printing them out, cutting them out, and dealing with the spray adhesive and all that nonsense. But I having tried it, it's a real hassle. I'd much rather point somebody to a game that you could just go buy, right? Even if it's whether it's a new product or something old, as long as it's not super crazy rare.
Or where are you going to buy it? You mean at a brick and mortar?
I wonder where one might buy games.
Where could someone?
So,
I kind of am curious about this too, because as you guys know, I'm not the most experienced with war games, and it's a little bit outside of my general wheelhouse, but obviously we work with it quite a bit. So I'm kind of generally aware of what people have had success with. So what I've seen a lot of is people recommending the card-driven war games. So for entry level, for getting the idea warmed up and launching into that. So games like Undaunted, which isn't maybe your typical chit and pull, but it is a really good way for someone to kind of warm to the idea, especially if they're more used to a card or a board game. They're like, oh, well, let's try this card game. Well, it happens to be about war and conflicts, but we can warm into it with things like that.
Plus, that designer is a fine-looking young man.
He's a fine-looking young man.
He's a handsome lad over there, Mr. David Thompson.
Yeah, He-Man.
So, I've heard some good stuff too about like the Commands and Colors series.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very easy to access, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty accessible to a lot of people. But yeah, I'm actually really curious for you guys' input on what is a good way, because it's a question that I get asked pretty often. Is what kind of games do you think I should launch into if I'm going to start trying more games? So I'm actually really interested in what you guys think.
So when I hear card-driven games, my immediate thought is to run to things like For the People and Empire of the Sun.
Oh, hold on a second, sorry. Other Jess wants to say hi.
Oh, well, hi, other Jess.
Hi, guys.
How you doing?
Oh, look what she's got, too.
I brought etiquette practice. Not okay. Still not really okay.
Everybody loves chits, right?
Everybody. Oh, I love
it. Better.
Just so many.
Oh, I got a copy of...
sorted by type.
Yeah, I bought a copy. I don't even want to say what I bought because the person might be watching. And it was chits all loose in the bottom of the box. So worse than those.
Bye, guys.
I hate that. Bye.
Jess,
folks don't do that.
She realized she couldn't hear because I'm wearing the cans. So,
Jess, you're selling all 3 games of Undaunted for only $135.
Sounds like something we would do.
For the whole bundle? That sounds amazing.
Yeah, all 3 games.
Now you got me checking.
Jesus, it's He-Man himself.
Mr. David Thompson. We have also heard that it's acceptable. So I mean, I do think that something like Undaunted would be a good choice for somebody that plays board games, but not war games as such. I think it's got a comparable complexity level. I don't think it's incredibly simple, right? That was my point with these little tiny print and play postcard things. It was man, I think it's way more important to get engagement out of the new play, whoever the prospect is, either because they're into the topic or because you have somebody to teach them who is like super enthusiastic. I think that's more important than
that's right.
Just and complexity, which is not to say that I'm going to go introduce Vok Damrine to somebody tomorrow who's a complete noob. But we've got a brand new guy who's like a colleague of my one buddy that we play with, and he's never played war games before, and we're starting him out with BCS last Blitzkrieg, and that's going okay because he's interested in the topic.
Okay.
And I felt like that was the most, to me, that's, and I've said this before, I feel like that's the most important factor. I will also vouch to Tank on Tank. It's certainly very light. I'll vouch for that, but it's like a straight hex counter game too, right? There's no segue from Euro mechanics into hex and counter stuff. And in
like
that,
Undaunted.
In that context, I think Undaunted is kind of it's more of a bridge just because of its mechanical features.
Mhm.
Tank on Tank's very simple. It's easy to teach, but as Brant from the Armchair Dragoons will remind us incessantly when he runs it 37 times a day at Origins. But which I guess reminds me to ask is what's Noble Knights convention plans look like for the rest of the year?
Oof. Well, I know we have someone heading down to Little Wars Midwest pretty soon. So the Historical Gaming Miniatures Society, a little bit more on the miniature side than on the true war game front. But I just came back from GaryCon, actually, that was just at the end of last month. So now it's a little bit of downtime other than that until the fall, as far as I'm aware. I'm not sure that we're doing much else this summer, just because we have so much stuff going on. But I'm definitely hoping to get us going to more conventions. But man, GaryCon was a blast again.
It's supposed to be a really good event. I've thought about going multiple times. It's just that I don't have the bandwidth for it, right? It's at a terrible time of year for me where it's like sandwiched between two other things, and it's just not going to work for me.
How many people at GaryCon?
This year was a little over 3,000. So it's not
a ton. That's bigger.
Yeah, I mean it's not huge, but it's a good size convention.
That's a good amount of people.
That's pretty big. I mean, that's comparable in size to it. It's not as big, but it's comparable in size to WBC.
Yeah. I don't want it any bigger. I don't want to smell some guy's farts for 50,000 people. In 50,000 people, there's got to be someone there who's sick.
There's
got to be
gamers.
someone there who shit themselves. There's got to be someone there pissing themselves for sure.
That's less of a fact. I'm gonna, of course, joke about this every time the subject comes up about gamers and BO and not showering and no deodorant and all that stuff. But this is way less of a common experience now than it used to be. Okay, You're gonna have to trust me on this, because like back in 1990, my first Origins, which wasn't my first big convention, but it was my first Origins, 1995. Ooh boy.
I still remember the smell.
I still remember the smell. I remember the fabulous. There you go. I remember the fabulous record at the time. Record heat wave in Philadelphia. It was 109.
Oh,
so we didn't go anywhere. Nowadays, that's just average in July in Philadelphia, I believe.
Up at GaryCon, or down, I guess, from here. It's all kind of at a hotel resort, so it's all spread out over the whole place. So there's definitely also not a huge cluster of people all together to get that kind of pre-breathed air, and it's a kind of a classy place too. So everyone kind of is. It tends to be psychologically, people are more likely to treat something with respect if it is already a respectable environment. I think there's a word for, or there's a phrase for it. Yeah, the broken window phenomenon, where if a neighborhood's got a lot of broken windows, people are gonna disrespect it and throw their trash and break new windows. But if it's a nice, well-kept area, they're not nearly so likely to do so. It's so I think the venue is partially a factor in places like that. If it's just a big open hall where there's a bunch of people milling around, you don't really have that same incentive to treat the place with as much, or the people even with as much respect, even though that should be just a given. And I really think you're right. People really have come a long way in the last couple of decades about.
There's a couple reasons for that, but I will point out that if this has a shred of truth to it at all, that explains a great deal about ASL Oktoberfest, which is held in a building that I am a little surprised has not yet been condemned.
Seriously.
So, it's a total shithole. The elevators also don't work, and it's on the 6th floor.
Maybe it gives you the feeling of being in the factories in Stalingrad. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Except the windows were in better shape in Stalingrad, I believe. No, it's a bad location. Not that it was. I mean, I was only there for like 45 minutes, but yeah, and I had been there in like 15 or 20 years, probably 20. But That's almost exactly right. Actually, 20 plus or minus 2 years was the last time I was there. Kurt Schilling was not there this year, though. I will say that. So,
is there a reason why he wasn't there?
I don't know. Maybe Kurt's not playing ASL anymore. But
I wouldn't know. Doesn't it belong to him? Doesn't ASL belong to him?
He is part. No, ASL belongs to Hasbro, Dan. But he is a 1/3 owner, I think, still at MMP, but he has no active role in the company as far as I'm aware. So happy to be corrected on that. If somebody from Multi-Man Publishing wants to come in and issue a correction, I'll be happy to retract that. But that's my understanding of what that situation is right now. So Carl mentions Revolution Games' Death of an Army, IPRA. 1914. Won't finish the whole thing. Well, this is a factor too, right? So, and I've talked about this a little bit before, is folks who aren't used to war games or certain other types of games, which I'll get to in a second, might end up feeling intimidated by this thing that takes, even 8 or 10 hours to play, let alone 200, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would estimate, I haven't done this math in a while, but just doing a back of the envelope calculation of 4 times, say, 75, I would estimate that it took us about 300 hours to play Second Front, beginning to end.
Well, that just sounds like a hell of a lot of fun.
It was very fun. I'm not sure I would use the word fun, but it was very rewarding, and boy, was I done with it by the time we were done with it. You know what I'm saying?
Jess, what's your time cap in playing games? After how many hours, days?
Well, I mean, that a little bit of a tricky question because I like to range them. But again, my experience is more in line with RPGs and board games. So a lot of my favorite board games are definitely 3-4 hour board games sometimes. A lot of the ones that get the most play, though, are probably going to be hour and a half because that's what people can sometimes have the attention span or the time availability for. So I like to have, if I'm going to go to a game night, I usually will bring something that's light and quick, and then something that's going to be the meat of the event, if you will. So you can get warmed up and you can hang out for a little bit, and someone's got to take a call from their wife or, go change the baby or whatever it is. And then once that all is settled, then, you eat some food, you get fresh drinks, and then you settle down to the big game.
I'll see it. Case Blue is great. You got all the break time you want. The other 3 hours you're sitting around while the other people are taking their turn. So,
oh my God!
Now it's interesting that you put it that way, though, because you mentioned RPGs, and there is a parallel between RPG play, where the expectation, I think, certainly there's exceptions to this, but the expectation is generally that you're going to sit down on a regular schedule of some kind, whether it's every week or every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever, at a specific time, and you're going to play, and then you'll be done for the night, and then you'll resume where you left off the following session, right? And it's a serialized type of event, right? So this is directly parallel the experience with monster games, but the difference, which does create a problem, right, is that you have to leave the thing set up. I mean, you don't have to, but you'll spend the entire time setting it up and taking it down. So that's impractical.
Sure, and that eliminates a lot of people from the availability. Just if you don't have that space that you can leave it up, or a fancy gaming table that you can put the boards over, that's just not going to be realistic for so many people. Another one that, sorry to swing back left again, a lot of people have mentioned to me that playing solitaire war games is a really good entry point for war games because you can take all the time you want. But again, I would trust your expertise on that because I don't know.
Well, let me tell you my ADD expertise on learning solo war games. I was trying to learn what's that game? Bomb Run. It's a little card game that this and this and that. As soon as I come to a section where I don't understand, it's over.
That's a good point.
Put the game away. Put it away. Throw it away. I don't want to hear it.
So back in the day, first of all, solitaire war games are very popular. Okay, and I think we have seen a significant increase in the number of solitaire war games over the last 10 years, and in the number of people who are reporting playing solitaire games. But this is not a new phenomenon either. So back in the day, this is like early 70s, like 71, 72, 73. SBI used to put out these surveys in every issue of Strategy and Tactics. And they found that like the overwhelming majority of the people that bought their games were playing them primarily or exclusively solitaire. And I'm pretty sure they were the first company in wargaming or maybe hobby gaming to try and do that kind of feedback on that kind of scale. But that was like a cornerstone of their business model, was to continuously get feedback. And that's a thing that they found. So this isn't new, and you would have maybe thought that would have prompted them to do more solitaire games. There are a few that SPI did up to through 1982, but not very many compared to the 300 plus games that they put out over the lifetime of the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you feel like a lot of those people that were playing solitaire, playing it out of necessity solitaire when it wasn't designed to be? Or is that a preference? I mean, is there just that much of a contingency? I love to play a solitaire game sometimes.
I tell you what the problem is. Stigler. That's the problem.
Well, he hates him, but he's like Mikey from the Life cereal commercials, if you know what I mean.
Jesus. Stigler, man.
You just got to give him some Life cereal.
And the thing is, he's smart, too. He's smart. So he's quick. He's quick-lipped. You know what I mean?
He also hates the bagpipes, which is just unforgivable in my opinion.
Come
on. Ben Madison, he's a local. He's a friend of our shop.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned that before.
There you go.
I thought maybe you were saying that, say, Bayonet Brant. I thought you were saying that because maybe I had mentioned it before, but I guess not.
Well, it's come up because Ben Madison has done a lot of solo games, not exclusively solitaire games, but he is one of them, I think, most important designers operating in the sort of extended States of Siege family of solitaire war games that there's quite a lot of now, right? And I think frankly, and I think David would cop to this, I think we have to include something like Pavlovs House in that too. There's definitely it's certainly not it's not the same system, right? But I suspect that there's some inspiration from States of Siege there.
What's fun about Pavlovs House, if you're learning that game to introduce someone to it, there are 3 different scales happening, which is really cool.
That's actually one of the things that I think is really, really interesting about Pavlovs House is that you do have the kind of 3 different scales that you have to kind of be aware of. That's not common to see that as a design element. And I don't know that I don't know that I'd consider that game incredibly simple either. It's not. I think it's relatively sophisticated. I think it's one of
Dave Thompson who did it. How hard can it be?
Well, I'm not saying it's difficult. Those are 2 completely different things, right? You can have a sophisticated game with rich tapestry and decision making without necessarily making it complicated, right? Jess, right?
That definitely it's a challenge though, because I mean, games that hit that note are few and far between. It's a very delicate balance to maintain in any genre. But sorry, distracted by your chat.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, we agree that for putting up with Dan, viewers should get Jess should get a bigger discount because she's got to put up with Dan too. Remember?
Sorry, Jess. Sorry.
I'll email my boss in just a second here and remind him that I need a bigger discount.
Get that taken care of. They're going to start charging Jester extra though, because he complains every time.
But I mean, Pavlov's House is awesome to introduce somebody because they're going to get curious at the what are the scales? Tactical,
operational. I don't think there's a strategic level to that game, but there are 3 different scales. There's sort of a tactical, a grand tactical, and an operational is how
there's
I would
an intrigue there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe if the guy wants to carve out eyeballs with a knife, he's going to get into tactical.
I'm not sure there's a card for that, but anyway.
Probably in some game somewhere.
I have no doubt. There is also a digital version of that for those interested in that. So that might be a consideration. I mean, it's a solitaire game anyways. You don't have to really worry about finding an opponent. But the advantage of the digital game, whether that's like an actual digital version of the game or playing it on Vassal, is I don't have to worry about tearing it down and setting it up at all, right? A decent Vassal module will give you the setups. So, I mean, maybe you've got a greater or lesser amount of work to do yourself, because sometimes you have varying degrees of free setup, right? Where you set stuff up wherever you want within whatever parameters.
Who wants to stare at a goddamn screen all the time?
20 man hours to set up Case Blue. That's why.
Oof.
I'm just saying.
Yikes. I just, as we were talking, I was going through my data over here and I'm discovering that out of the top 12 best-selling war games from our end. Looks like about 9 of them are Solitaire.
Really? I mean, I don't find that terribly shocking, right? There are entire publishers of war games out there today that do very little other than Solitaire games. And many other publishers make it a point to include some kind of Solitaire, like an explicit Solitaire mechanism with everything they do.
Mm-hmm. That's starting to be more popular with board games and even RPGs too. I took it home already, but someone just recently gave me a Solitaire RPG book that I'm looking to.
Is it the one that Geek Gamers did?
No, this one was one by Limitless Adventures. It's called Blades in the Dark, I believe.
Oh.
Let me check and make sure I'm saying the right one, because like I said, I reached for it and it was here and I took it home. Adventures.
I mean, that's...
but yeah, there's quite a few. Oh, hey, Blades in the Dark. Nice. That's not the one I was thinking of, though. I'm conflating titles.
You're not thinking of Four Against Darkness, are you?
Say again?
You're not thinking of Four Against Darkness, are you?
No, I'm thinking of...
Because that's a Solitaire thing. There's a whole thing.
It's called Lost in the Dark, not Blades in the Dark. Lost in the Dark. So that's why
might be a related system, or it might not be. So that's very interesting, actually, because to many people, and I can sort of sympathize with this position, the collective nature is kind of what makes it an RPG, right? It's collaborative in multiple ways. It's cooperative as well. And some people will like get uppity about that. Oh, that's not an RPG. It's Solitaire. You can't have that. Like, okay, but at what point are we drawing the line? I mean, it just depends on exactly what features you want to consider essential and which ones you don't, right? And the fact that there's other players there is only one of the various elements that make up an RPG. I'm seeing increasing traffic in that space as well, as somebody who does follow RPGs. So Geek Gamers, who has a YouTube channel, actually just published a book on Solitaire role-playing. I have not checked it out yet. I need to, but it's very interesting. And there is a solo, and it's called Solo, Traveler RPG book as well, which I should probably at least investigate.
Traveler is a solo game. That's an interesting thought.
Ardy, that book there, that dark book you just showed me, what's that about?
Blades in the Dark. It's about the adventuring party is a band of criminals or ne'er-do-wells in a sort of steampunkish fantasy city. And the game is about, planning jobs and executing the jobs. It's quite neat. I have played it before. So.
And you need a game master, right?
Yeah. What's that?
You need a game master.
Yes, that one's a game master.
Oh, wait, it is?
It is. This one is. This one is.
I thought Blades in the Dark was a DM-less.
Nope.
And how much?
Learn me a thing every day.
What do books cost now?
This cost, and I bought it a few years ago.
That one...
$30 maybe.
From us, it is brand new at $24.95.
You
get
discount.
They can get pre-owned for only $18.
Save your dollars. This is a very good game too. When I did my best games to play, if you're annoyed by D&D, I actually included this in that list. It's a pretty cool game. There are literary reference that I would provide, but I don't know that anybody would get them, so I won't. But yeah, so Traveler specifically is kind of interesting because a lot of people, there's a lot of like things you can do in Traveler that aren't technically playing Traveler that are nevertheless Solitaire experiences, like making the characters, which is a whole mini game, designing the spaceships, which is its own whole mini game, generating star systems, which is its own whole mini game. So a lot of people put a lot of time into that without other people necessarily sitting at the table with them. But I'm curious to see the current state of the art thinking on not just GM-less games, because I've played GM-less games, but actual Solitaire games.
And
so we were talking about this, Jester, before the show, and about how Dan's complaining about how stuff's so expensive in Canada, and they read me off some prices that really didn't seem all that bad, considering it's in Monopoly money anyway, right? You just go get your copy of Monopoly off the top shelf in the closet, pull some bills out, and take it up to Curdy, whatever, and off you go with some games, right?
Yeah.
So,
sounds like a win.
Yeah. So need water. Sorry.
But weed is cheap.
Hey, at least you've got that, right?
You get that free government weed up there. It's like the welfare cheese down here.
Right now, it's tolerated. You can grow 4 plants, and no one gives a hoot.
I would imagine that that the welfare cheese in Wisconsin is really exceptional. Actually.
All cheese in Wisconsin is really pretty exceptional. But I think actually there was just a gigantic cheese conference just this last week. We have cheese conferences. And the World Dairy Expo and all the
I'm totally unsurprised by all of this information.
Of course.
I have an oven mitt that I think just says "fuck, I love cheese."
Everyone has issued that one of those at their high school graduation in Wisconsin.
Yep. You live in Wisconsin, you have to have the "fuck, I love cheese."
You get that in a Peter Frampton album, and you're all set.
No, but how can you not love cheese? Come on.
Right? I love cheese. Come on, Dan. You're in French Canada. Of course you love cheese.
Of course. And I bet you Stigler hates cheese.
He probably hates cheese. He's probably got some kind of dairy intolerance or something like that. So he hates cheese.
That guy's not allowed to come to ArdyCon. If you do an ArdyCon, ban him.
I think Stigler will be too irritable. I would be delighted to have Stigler here, but I think he'd be too irritable to come. I would promise cheese and bagpipe music and a variety of things that he hates, and all the counters would be clipped. And we would wear poofy shirts and drink tea with our pinkies up in the air. It's going to be fantastic.
We'll have high tea.
At some point, at some point, I'm going to bust out the poofy shirt for Stigler. Actually, it's in a closet, and we haven't unpacked that from the movie because it's in with the medieval garb. Stigler likes cheese. So that's
a Tilsiter, or did he screw up Stilton?
Tilsiter? No, I think he means Tilsiter actually. So, but so as far as games that are suitable for new war gamers, I think a lot depends on what context that person's coming in from, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're coming in from
RPGs or board games or no game ever,
or Euros or Magic or video games, right? That's an increasingly common situation where people, who played, thousands of hours of World of Warcraft are suddenly playing D&D now, right? How do we communicate to those folks that this exists, right? That's a whole nother thing. And then how do you include them? Because there's a social aspect too, where you're getting together with people that you can presumably stand to deal with for 4 hours at a time, which is very unlike my Easter holiday. But there's a social aspect of friend making, element of getting involved in these games too, right? At some point, you start going to the game, whatever it is, because that's what you do on Sunday night or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. So, I saw someone mentioned earlier about the coin series games, which is something that has been recommended to me as a jumping in point. And then I later heard conflicting on that as well. If you guys were to start, if I were to jump into a coin series game, as someone who's come from Euro games, I play a lot of Euro games. Is there one in particular that you guys think would be a good entry point for Euro gamers?
I could tell you which. No, I totally disagree with Dan here. So I could tell you what the easiest one is to play without having seen the British Way, which just came out. So that's got like 4 coin mini games in it. So that might be the exception to this. But my first question is not going to be, can this person handle the complexity? Because some of them are there's a decent range of complexity in coin games. Some of them are pretty easy. Some of them are there's a lot going on, right? So my question then is of the available coin topics, is there one that particularly stands out to you as interesting?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the 2 that were just mentioned, Cuba Libre and Andean Abyss, but I'm very fond of South America. I studied abroad in Venezuela when I was younger. So those things intrigue me. So those are actually the 2 that I would look at and think of, but I didn't know if that was a good starting spot. So
Cuba Libre is so there, like I said, I wouldn't start somebody with Case Blue because that'd be dumb, but I wouldn't start anybody on coin in either Fire in the Lake or Pendragon, and I'll advise them to steer clear of Liberty or Death as well. Those are at the higher end of complexity for coin games, but Cuba Libre and Andean Abyss are near the bottom of the coin complexity ladder. So, other than, again, with the possible exception of the British Way, which just came out, Cuba Libre is maybe the easiest coin game. Falling Sky is also pretty straightforward. But there's like a non-player faction in Falling Sky that's introducing an additional variable that you wouldn't have to deal with in Cuba Libre. Plus, Cuba Libre has a very simple map. There's not a lot of spaces on the map, and there's no weird road or lines of communication or anything like that. There's only a couple different terrain types. Plus, one of the players gets to play the Mafia, so in Cuba Libre. So, and your objective, your victory condition is you want to open more casinos.
What?
Yes.
Okay.
So well, I mean, they just want to make the money, right? They don't care about this revolution.
Jack Ruby?
That's just bad for business, right? So it's neat, actually. I've played both. I've actually never played Andean Abyss, but it is one of the it's one of the easy ones. So, but barring like at the very high end of complexity there, I'd say step into whichever one you feel is most interesting, right? If that's Andean Abyss or Cuba Libre, all the better.
Well, that might be a good. Oh, sorry.
Let me give you my opinion story on playing my first coin game with the designer and with people who knew how to play. Oh, I had no idea what game I was playing.
This is true. He had no idea what game.
No idea.
Well, but is that the fault of the game, or was it the fault of the people that already knew the game and took a lot for granted?
It's the fault of the 2/3 of a bottle of scotch that he had consumed prior to the game.
I was with the designer.
So, and he was probably putting it away too, but he's 7.5 feet tall, and you're not. So I'm just saying, there's a body mass thing going on.
Cut it for me. I can't do coin. Can't do coin.
Alan Salzar mentions Napoleon at Waterloo, which I was thinking about today, actually, because this was actually a free giveaway game that SPI was giving away at one point. And Decision, I almost said Decipher. Decision sells it for like $50 if it's even still in print now. But it is a very newbie friendly game, right? If you're interested in Waterloo in particular. There is also a print and play version, but I've already said that I considered that a pain in the ass, unreasonable to ask of a new player, especially.
But if the price is right, the price is right, and if you don't mind doing this, yeah, exactly. Right. No one's ever going to fault someone for going for a free option if they're not sure that they're going to love the genre. That makes complete sense to me. Try something before you go all in and dedicate a lot of hours and money on it.
I, of course, totally agree with that, but I would just, find somebody that has the thing and play it with them.
In Falling Sky, Ardy, you said there's another faction.
There's a fifth non-player faction in Falling Sky.
What is it? And do we?
It's I forget, but it's just one of the extra. It's like another German tribe. That's like an additional variable that you have to account for. We can hire them as mercenaries, for example. So. To my recollection, it's been a while.
The Decision Games Napoleon at Waterloo, I don't think is still in print. Last one looks like it was 2014, I think.
It sounds approximately correct.
Give or take.
With the graphic design, that looks like it was 2002. So.
Well, look, are we going to talk war game graphic design here? Because I have thoughts.
We may be slightly, not everywhere, but man, there's plenty that's behind the curve here in wargaming. I mean, to some extent, there are limitations to the medium, right?
Yeah.
But we could be doing better at that, generally speaking. John C. mentions the upcoming People Power coin game, which I think is shipping like any time now, possibly already.
Was that one of those P500?
Yeah,
titles?
So
doesn't that have to do with the Philippines something?
Yes, that is set in the Philippines. So it sounds particularly interesting, and apparently in the Philippines they're very excited about it. Gandhi, I actually have but haven't played yet. I'd like to, because there's something very interesting going on in Gandhi in that there are two of the four factions. Two of them are non-violent factions. That is a first for coin, and I think there's at least one other coin game in the pipeline somewhere that actually has that as a feature as well.
I've been curious about what seems like an oxymoron there with the Gandhi, the war game. I still have a little bit of a hard time wrapping my head around Gandhi, the war game.
Yeah, I know. What
Gandhi would too, in fairness.
But yeah, I mean, it continues to be a well-reviewed game that I know very little about, but I do laugh every time I see it.
Who's the designer?
Bruce Mansfeld.
Bruce Mansfield.
Look at that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are certainly plenty of hairy, angry, bitter old wargamers who will tell you that no coin game is actually a war game anyway. So that one I might actually agree with them on, and a couple of the others I might actually agree. But I think clearly, I just didn't play it as a war game to me.
Can't we all just get along?
So,
Jesus
or
Christ.
Fire in the Lake for that
Get
matter.
along.
And
Ooh,
actually,
why not on Fire in the Lake? Why would that not be?
oh, I think it is. It's about the conflict in Afghanistan.
Yes.
There are just
Fire in the
people who are,
No,
you know,
Vietnam. Fire in the Lake is Vietnam.
Fire. Did I say fire? Distant Plain is Afghanistan.
Okay,
Fire
yeah,
in
I
the
was
Lake is
like-
Vietnam. Sorry if I said that wrong. We're a little frazzled over here.
Oh, no worries.
But
Let's just get along, eh?
I mean, I think both of those are war games. But some other coin games, including possibly Gandhi, are not. Liberty or Death has a whole additional combat system bolted on, and actually, Pendragon kind of does too. And those are three right there: Fire in the Lake, Pendragon, and what was the third one I just mentioned?
Falling
Fire in the
Sky.
Lake, Pendragon, and Liberty or Death are probably my
God.
three favorite coin games, actually, and they happen to be the most complicated ones that I've got.
What would be the argument on some of those coin games that they are not war games? Just out of curiosity, just so I can understand that better.
So the thinking is that the game has to have some kind of quote unquote kinetic battle in it to function as a war game.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that like civil unrest qualifies. But there's like straight up shooting war in Fire in the Lake and Liberty or Death and Falling Sky too, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite abstract, and certainly in the case of Falling Sky. But I mean, do we say that there's no battles in there just because that's where we want to draw the line, right? Where exactly? Everybody's going to draw that line at a different place. I only report the news.
Fair. Okay. Well, I like to understand. You guys are a great resource for me eventually actually entering into the war game arena. So I appreciate that. So similarly, Memoir 44, for example, would that fall under that? Is it a war game or is it not a war game?
No.
You think it's not a war game?
It's a war game.
I think it's a war game. There's
That's
like 10 little
color.
plastic tanks in it. I mean,
Yeah.
how is it not a war game, right? Whether you think it's a good war game or not is up to you. I actually have had a pretty miserable experience playing it every time I've played it, but that I might just be unlucky in that respect.
I'm sure Richard Borg is thinking when he brings his check to the bank, damn.
Oh yeah, as he's wheeling those wheelbarrows full of money into his bank vault, is definitely thinking, man, it's too bad those guys don't think this is a war game. Too bad. Damn it.
Yeah. Feel bad for him.
Yeah. And I mean, I do have some sympathy for the, there does need to be a line drawn someplace, right? But it's kind of up to us as people that are into this kind of thing as to where we want to draw the line and whether we think this is a profitable discussion or not. We can all get along. You can get along and play your Terraforming Mars all you want. I mean, you're a Carcassonne or something like that. Terraforming Mars, I've actually played and it's good.
Game.
I love Terraforming Mars.
Terraforming Mars is a pretty good game. But Carcassonne, I think I don't think there's much to it.
Yes, I have Terraforming Mars. Is it? I never played it. Easy to learn.
It's not that difficult to learn, but reading through the rules and getting started with it for the first time does look daunting and seem daunting. But once you start doing it, if we were at a table together and started playing it, you would pick up on it very quickly. It's really not that complicated, but it looks like it's going to be very complicated. If that makes sense.
And is it worth the time to put in to read the rules, to break your head, to learn how to play?
I think absolutely. I think that's one of the best games that's been produced in the last couple of decades. I love that game.
Lots of people will agree.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. But save yourself the trouble. Go watch a YouTube video. Watch any number of the how to play.
There's this thing called YouTube. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, and you should check it out.
What? No.
Is there any fighting involved in there? Any conflict?
Nope.
No. There is a little bit of occasional antagonism. It's competitive, certainly, but there's a shared map, so there's that component to it. But it's more it's more point driven, and who's doing the best job of doing this collective task together. So it can be adversarial, but there is no direct conflict.
It's a little bit unusual in that respect because it is like definitionally cooperative, but it's not really cooperative, you know?
Yeah, it's not because you're working separately completely.
Yeah, it's a competitive, but your the progress you make is reflected in the progress that other people have made too. So, because you're kind of putting this like terraformed Mars map together as you go. I'm not sure I like it quite as much as you, Jess, but it's a good game. There's no question about that.
So, Jess, is it like Carcassonne, where basically you're trying to build your city and someone else comes and takes part of the city, getting half the points, type stuff?
Mechanically, it's not very similar, but in a certain respect, well, with Carcassonne, you're building out the map as you go, right? It's becoming alive as you go. With Terraforming Mars, there's a preset map. You've got your classic hex grid map with some terrain features on it.
It makes it a war game.
Right? See, hex grid, it's a war game. So there's a certain there's end game criteria that have to be met. So when the whole planet's temperature, oxygen level, and some other stuff are reached, that's when the game ends, and whoever has gotten the most points from terraforming the planet that you're all terraforming together. But it's card driven. It's basically an engine builder. So you're developing your own company. You're a company.
I have no idea what that even means, but please continue.
No, sorry. So yeah, you're kind of building on your own mechanisms to enrich yourself so that you can have money to spend on improvements for the planet that increase the oxygen, that build the forest, that lay the ocean tiles. So that's the other one. It's the ocean tiles, the oxygen, and the temperature. So if I've done the most putting out of those forests and raising the oxygen and winning the awards and so forth, then I'm going to win. But you're all still manipulating the same map together.
So is it like what's Chad Jensen's game there?
Combat Commander?
Dominant Species. Have you played that, Jess?
I have not. No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Sorry.
So what I will say about Terraforming Mars is it does look fairly complicated, or I wouldn't say complicated, but it looks fairly involved. But it's one of those games where most of the rules are actually on the cards, and they don't come up until you play that card. The basics of it are pretty straightforward, so you can actually get started with it relatively easily.
It's definitely more accessible than it looks.
And there's a digital version of that too, which you could probably play online.
Yeah.
So,
like this option adds some conflict to Terraforming Mars.
Yeah, exactly. Just put a CRT in there and a little Arnold Schwarzenegger miniature, and with where he's got the bulging eyes at the end of the movie in particular. That's the one I like. I have not played Dominant Species. I do know that it's quite a popular game. It's also considered fairly heavy by people who play those kinds of games. To what extent that is true, I have no idea.
And quite long, I hear.
That's possible. I mean, a lot of those. So that's an interesting observation, because we found that a lot of the classic war game publishers, when they did games that weren't war games, that they kind of tended to wait really long. Now, this was definitely true of Avalon Hill. A lot of those Avalon Hill games take quite a long time to play. Now, in the context of the expectations for those kind of games, right? Like Civilization, usually 6-8 hours to play that, right? Titan, 6 to 8 hours. I mean, it could have really, a great game, but it's got some issues, but it's still, I think, a classic game. Their rail games were like that. Those are not short, quick games, right? And I wonder to what extent their experiences dealing with the war game people, whose expectations tended to be different, informed the design work on the other side when they decided to go do stuff like World of Spices and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm. What you got?
He's got Dominant Species.
I have Dominant Species, but the rule book is really difficult.
I imagine, since you're trying to read it in what, Korean?
I think it's Korean, yeah.
That's what I thought. Don't ask me though. So, why do you have a Korean edition of Dominant Species?
Because Kai Jensen really appreciates me. Okay.
Okay, good. That's great. That's great. Nice, awful nice of Kai to send you a version of a game that you can't read.
You're damn right.
Oh, thanks, Chester.
Ticket to Ride. Yeah, actually, I remember that, Chester, because now you're taking shit for mentioning Ticket to Ride, which I have never played, but I am provisionally willing to play Ticket to Ride at some point. Every time I somebody says, "Hey, you want to play this railroad game?" and I say, "Oh no, I hate railroad," and if I play it, I end up having fun anyway. So, so I actually don't hate rail games. It's hard to like engage me in them until I'm playing it, and then I'm like, "Woohoo, this is great!"
Same, because at the and in Russian now.
Yeah, and it was no retreat, so I figured I'd buy the Russian version because the original thing, and I just can't understand the rules.
Well, they're in Russian.
Well, there is no retreat.
You know the other reason you can't understand the rules is because it's still in the shrink wrap. So there's that.
Touche.
Yeah.
I have.
Jess, what would I get on Noble Knight for a game like this? $300-400?
That depends. I don't know too much about some of those foreign language
Russian.
editions are actually
it's
pretty
by
hard.
Gaga Games. Gaga.
I have, I think, 3 games that are not in English, and in 2 of them, there are English. They're war games, and there are English rules in with the game. The third product is the Diseños Orbitales beautiful slipcase hardcover edition of Classic Traveler, which I understand goes for decent change nowadays. Actually,
yes, it does.
Absolutely gorgeous product. I got that in an Origins auction years ago, back when Origins has an auction. Last I checked, Alan Salazar, they actually do have a copy of Legrand here. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I saw one not long ago.
you might want to check that again. So
Jess,
that
let me
is
know
a
if I can
quite
get a
rare.
grant for this, eh?
Anything.
I don't think we've ever played that
He's
game.
got to
yet.
finance his trip to ArtyCon with that thing.
Yeah, you're damn right I will.
What was the title of that game?
No Retreat,
Retreat.
the
No
Russian
Retreat.
front.
Okay, yeah, weird. I don't think that we've carried that
Yeah, but
product.
it's in Russian. It's
Now you've got Putin mad. Thanks, Dan.
yeah, you don't want to get him mad.
No, you'll end up with the Russian spam bots again, like I got all the time now.
Yeah, we've got La Grande Guerre. That one.
Hey, that's good, Jess.
I
That's
try.
good.
That's what you get with a liberal arts major. Let's see. We do only have one though, but
Yeah, nobody's got more than one of those. That's an Azure Wish game, and they're a French publisher, and their stuff was hard to get over here when they were around, and they're not around anymore. So even if you over in Europe, they tend to run a little bit less. Over here, they tend to run even more because it's really hard to get that thing. Callendale says that is the greatest World War I game, I believe, unless he's changed his mind on that since then. And it looks neat, but it also looks like a lot in terms of game and in terms of money. Of course, John points out that No Retreat was designed by Carl, which you should have Carl sign it before you sell it. Then you get even more for it, right?
Hold on a second, John. I want to show you something.
Oh, God.
Most of my games, damn.
I have seen Urban Sprawl. Jess, have you played that by any chance?
no, I haven't.
Yeah, that's a GMT game that was like sitting on the sale page for a long time. It didn't seem to take off, and I'm not sure why. I agree with. Go ahead.
I was going to say my mistake. We do have No Retreat, but we have it as by GMT.
Yeah, because it is normally.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. I was
He's
looking
got
for
the
the
Russian
Gaga
edition.
Games edition.
Yeah,
I was
no,
like, I've never seen that.
I know the
before.
designer, so the designer gets so many copies of his own game, whatever. And he asked me, "You want a Russian version of the game?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And then he said, "You want a Chinese version of the game?" And I said, "Yeah, sure."
Actually, if you think about it, it would be kind of cool to play it on. I mean, there's not that much text on the board. It would be kind of cool to just play it on the Russian board with the rest of the English components.
Are you kidding? Oh, well, okay. Because the board's all in Russian, so.
Well, yeah, but you figure it out, right?
Right.
You just got to learn the Cyrillic alphabet. It's not that hard, right?
Sure. Man, that is so intimidating. Everything with Russian is vastly intimidating.
Yeah, I was doing the Duolingo Russian for a while, and then when you start getting into the actual I did pretty good with the alphabet. It's really not that hard to learn, and even mostly the pronunciation I could sort of handle in a terribly inept Ohio way. But then you started getting into like the actual grammar, and I totally face planted on it. So I'm like, nope, going back to German. Thank you very much.
Hey, what's the new irregular combat series?
I'm not sure what that is. Remind me exactly what this means, because this is ringing a bell. There is somebody has come out with a series, at least a loose series, called the Irregular Combat series. Is that the Brian Train series from Compass that starts with what was that quad that they did?
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
Okay, good. You're a faster Googler than I am.
Yeah. If that's the
baby coin?
Maybe give me a name of a game
Baby
here, guys.
coin.
Brief Border Wars is the game I'm thinking of. And if that's the game we're talking about, then I don't think it strongly resembles Coin in any way. I think it's lighter. It doesn't have any of, I mean, there's cards, but it doesn't have any of the other characteristics that one would associate with a Coin game. So if that's the series we're talking about, then I don't think that resembles Coin in the slightest.
You know why Brian Train does like?
Okay. This is different. So this is a guest or just of Robin Hood from our good friend Fred Serval.
Yeah.
And that should be coming along. And Cross Bronx Expressway by somebody operating under a name that I don't recognize. Or a team of people operating under that name. And that actually looks super interesting. That's a game basically about urban development and the compromises and negotiations that have to happen in the course of urban development. I was uninterested when I thought it was just about building the actual Cross Bronx Expressway, but there's a lot more going on in that than that. It actually looks super intriguing.
Brian Train does for the quad games because the mushrooms in Vancouver are really heavy.
The mushrooms. I'm not sure Brian doesn't seem like quite a mushroom guy to me. I could be.
He's in Vancouver. What's the matter with you?
Jess, do you folks have a game called Hegemony?
We have had. Let me see if we have right now.
Okay, there is more than one thing called Hegemony, but what I'm thinking of is a pretty recent release called Hegemony Drive Your Class to Victory or something like that. It's looks like a quite complicated political game. And I started watching videos on it. I'm like, oh, this kind of looks interesting.
Meandering Mike says Hegemonia.
No, it's called Hegemony. It's called Hegemony.
The one
former,
from
not the latter.
2020, right?
Possibly.
That's my daughter's middle name, Hegemonia.
2020.
It looks like if it's the one from Rand Corporation from 2020.
No,
yes.
that's not the. You guys have that?
We do.
Ooh, holy cow! So that can't be easy to get.
That's
is
why I was
something
thinking it was
different.
The one that you meant. Oh.
Yeah, I'm showing this as a 2023 release. I had the impression that this released in like 22. It's called Hegemony: Lead Your Class to Victory, and it's by Hegemonic Project Games and a variety of international partners, including Simon and Bumble 3 Interactive and Don't Panic. This may just not have made it down to the public yet. That's possible.
Oh, that one. Okay, no, I was spelling it the Hegemony. Okay.
Yes, with a D. That's the one from Rand. And
yeah. Okay.
people got spooked by that because like the sticker price on it was like $300 or $400. But it's like, man, first of all, they printed like 18 of these. Okay. So secondly, this is not a hobbyist's game, right? This is a professional product. If you're buying this, you're probably expensing it out to the corporate account. So the game I'm thinking of was on Kickstarter. And it's pretty interesting. It looks vaguely coin-like, much more coin-like looking than Brief Border Wars, certainly.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at it now. Oh, that does look like a crunchy.
It looks meaty. Looks real meaty. I'm also hearing, this was mentioned in the chat by somebody, the Europa Universalis price of power thing that just got kickstarted, came out some months ago, I believe. And I'm hearing people telling me that's the most complicated game they've ever seen. Now, I think they're nuts, but that's what people are telling me.
I don't know. I have some. There's very few times when I pick up a game and I go, this is too complicated for me. But it has happened a couple of times. Kanban EV. I'm never going to play that. Never.
Okay. So I worked with the Kanban system when I worked at Delphi, once a subsidiary of General Motors, and I don't need to spend my recreational time dealing with Kanban. Thank you very much.
I don't want to do that. As much as I love worker placement and resource management and critical path formulation, that looked like actual work.
I spent too much time in the automotive industry to find that fun. It's like, no, I'm not doing that.
I just thought about something. Jess, company that has easy war games, Worthington Publishing.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, just across the board, they generally have pretty accessible looking titles.
Generally, but not presumably unsophisticated titles. I mean, I've got Soviet Dawn right up here, their recent re-release of the Darren Level Off game, and it's a States of Siege game. It's relatively sophisticated by that standard. So there's a lot to like in Worthington's lineup game wise, and of course their production quality is really good.
Yeah.
I forgot Dan interrupted me and I lost my train of thought. I do this to him all the time. So
you know what feels.
Well, so Meandering Mike, BGG says this is 2023. I've learned not to trust BGG's numbers on this.
Yeah, we definitely don't have that one yet. And it was Kickstarter launched, but I'm not seeing a lot of info available on it.
There's tons of video on it. So people have the thing, but they're also saying doesn't ship till June. So I'm not sure what's actually going on. In fact, they just gave out a free copy to everybody with a YouTube channel, in which case I should have inquired, but I didn't. I just bought it. So I will tell you this, as I lean towards more complicated, longer games and stuff like that, right? So I have no problem with complicated games by themselves. There have been games that I looked at the rules and nope, put it down, put it back in the box, went to the shelf, and presumably the thing's going to get dumped at some point. So it is very possible to do that. Dale Brady asking about Champion Hill. It's a great introductory Civil War battle. The one that I'm thinking of at the moment is Hill of Death from Tiny Battle Publishing. That's available right now. The other alternative I could think of is the Gamer Civil War Brigade Series Champion Hill, which is terrific, but the system is terrific, but it's got that's going to be harder to get. So right now, if you're looking at Champion Hill specifically, go check out Hill of Death. So, and we've got all that stuff just got mentioned too. And Clark Commando 1983, CWB Champion Hill, that's the one I'm thinking of. That's a great question, Jess, and I guess we may close with this. What is the most expensive game product that Noble Knight has?
Ooh,
can you search the entire database by price, high to low?
I can't, but I can nearly answer your question by memory of this one. There's a couple of things that spring to mind. I know that we have some original art, so I don't know if that's gonna. Does that count?
Not the Deities and Demigods cover though.
That one's not for sale. Yeah, sorry. Okay. I don't even know what a price on that would be. It's priceless. But we do have the Shadowrun original logo art. I think that one was that Dana Knutson did that one, and I think that one is currently in the vicinity of $30,000.
Oh my God!
Yes. We recently had a really, really fine copy of the original TSR D&D wood grain box in just absolutely pristine condition. I think it had some signatures on it, and that one was also in the range of the down payment on a house.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's probably 25, 20, 30 grand.
Let me see what else I'm.
And that's a very hard to find in those kind of conditions.
Yeah, it was really, really crisp. I mean, it looked like it had just come out of Gary's basement. Mm-hmm. We've got also, let's see, in the Magic Room, we've got an entire set of Power 9 cards for Magic the Gathering.
I don't even know what that is.
Don't worry about it. A couple of these guys will probably know. But yeah, some really old high-end priced Magic cards. The most expensive single card we have right now is about $11,500.
Come on.
We've got a 4th edition booster box of Magic going for about 15 grand right now.
Yeah, this kind of thing depresses me. Let me tell you.
It hurts, doesn't it? Let me see what we've got for highest.
Boy, I wish I would have had that mixed alpha beta set when we went and bought this house, huh?
So many people, man. Even some of the things I had as a kid that I look back and I'm like, oh, cool. If I'd have just known, I could have bought a car with that. We have a copy of the Ghost Tower of Inverness, an old D&D module.
The original one, yeah.
Yeah, the original one. That one's about 12,000 right now.
That has always been very rare.
Yeah.
12 grand.
Yep.
Another big rarity is the original version of Palace of the Silver Princess.
Yeah, the band edition. We've had a few of those come and go.
Yeah, which got pulled. Another amusing one is the outer, back in the 2nd edition AD&D era, when they did the monstrous compendium in the binders, right? And they did like 2 binders, maybe 3 binders, and then they did these packs for them. I encourage anybody interested, to go find a picture of the original cover art for the Outer Planes Appendix monstrous compendium set, and wonder how that got through the editorial staff at TSR.
A lot of things got through there.
Yeah,
they didn't notice. As far as war games, so I was just looking on the war game front. We don't. Not to say it's cheap, but I've definitely seen higher prices on some things right there. The highest price war game that we have currently, pardon my French, is called Up Against the Wall, Motherfucker, full-size original SPI version.
Yep, that's a James F. Dunnigan design.
Yep.
The SPI version seems to be extremely rare. That was actually done for the Columbia University student newspaper or something like that. And I think SPI did print a small number of them as well. So that's quite rare. And
then what do we've got? La Bataille de Friedland is like $1,000. I can't even see I've never seen the inside of that game ever, because it's just in that white sealed up paper box. I have no idea what's in there.
That's how they ship.
Yeah, it's difficult because when I look at the listing on it, how am I supposed to promote that? That's a white. Our picture of that product is a white rectangle. It's difficult to know what to say about that.
Yeah, that's a little bit tough to promote. John C's asking about Case Blue. I see a VGNM unpunched for $795, $775 over there,
which is currently slightly higher than the price for a campaign for North Africa.
That is not a bad price at all these days for an unpunched Case Blue, I'm afraid to say.
Jess, are people really gonna buy this?
Up Against the Wall, motherfucker?
That I don't know. Let me see. You know what? I'm curious about our sales history of that. Let me
VGNM unpunched campaign for North Africa, $770. That's not bad.
Mm-hmm. Someone's gonna buy that game for $800.
I've seen that for $1,200. So, and I've seen Case Blue for $1,200 as well.
So basically, you're not gonna play it. The guy keeps it in shrink and resells it, man.
So I guess we'll maybe end with this. The most expensive single war game I have ever purchased, I did buy from you guys, Jess, was Second Front, and I want to say it was about $450.
Oh
I got it home. I looked at it. I said, fantastic, and I started punching it the same day. So
I buy games to own the games to play games. Yeah, I like got to do them. Let me see. I'm just curious about our sales history of Up Against the Wall, motherfucker. We've had a couple of different. Oh, there's a micro edition.
I'm not sure what that means, but there are a couple of different versions of it.
But yes, we have sold copies of that for more than the current listing price. Although the one I'm looking at from our most recent sale prior was also an uncut.
Yeah, I'm not sure those were mounted counters, actually. Recall that the first few SPI games, I believe, did have unmounted counters. And I'm not sure exactly when their version of that showed up. So and I'm not going to investigate this, frankly. I don't care that much. It is a simulation game of student protests at Columbia University in the late 60s or something like that. So up against the brick. He's a funny guy. All right, so I'm not sure we have stayed ruthlessly on topic here tonight, but I think we've had a lot of fun. Oh, come on, Jess.
Honestly, I've reaped a lot of information from you guys on this, but I feel like I just, left turn straight into let's talk about terraforming Mars.
We are
but
not.
I'm genuinely interested. I want to know, because one of these days, someone's going to get me at a table for a war game, and I want to do that. But I think part of the difficulty with onboarding someone to a war game is sort of like what you mentioned with your experience with the coin games. Coming to the table with a bunch of people who know war games can be very intimidating, just because they're like, okay, so then on this phase we're going to be, but they're going to take for granted that I know how your chit pull system works.
Yeah.
That oh, well, that icon means this. Obviously it always means that. But for someone who's coming in on the first time, it's not even an intentional thing that you might be doing. And I'm guilty of that with any board game too. Sometimes they'll say, on this phase, or, it's an engine builder game, and someone's like, you're going to have to tell me that like I'm a human being and not like a weird, nerd that knows all about these games. So there might be a lot of really good games out there that are great for intro games, but it really just depends on who's teaching it to you.
Yes.
The complexity level or the legacy status of it, is it a campaign game or not, might be less relevant than your interest in the subject matter and who you're playing it with and their patience level to teach you.
Mm-hmm. I completely concur. So, there was something else I wanted to say, and I forgot what it was. It's been that kind of an evening. I've just literally spent the half an hour immediately before the show hauling shit from the back of the car into the front yard. So
how's the new house?
Literal shit, big bags of shit. The house is great. We bought the house and we moved in like late July or August, I guess. We did sell the old house in October, so that was great. That was more or less the way we wanted that to work out. Around, Dan, when did that happen? Maybe early February.
What?
No, it wouldn't have been early February. Maybe it was in December. We had a big windstorm, 60-mile-an-hour gusts. A tree fell over, flattened my car, and a car was totaled. 100% total write-off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was fun. The shed and insurance, the car was covered by car insurance, so I got some money out of that. And it was, this was fortunately not the nicer car. This was my old junk-ass car that was 16 years old with 180,000 miles on it. So I always said I was going to drive it till it can't drive it anymore. I did. So, but here's the thing: is I'm like sitting outside, sitting in the other car smoking, when the tree falls on that car about 30 feet away. So I saw the whole thing. So good thing I was wearing my brown pants. If you know what I'm saying.
I was gonna say, did you see that like slow motion time where you watch it happen?
I heard the cracking, and I looked up, and it was like boom, and bounced off the car. The car actually broke the tree, so there's that.
And make them like they used to.
Yeah, and then the rest of the tree went and flattened the shed. The shed was not covered at all. So, thanks to the wind deductible, which is 10 times the normal deductible for the homeowner's insurance. So,
well, you know what? Like I said before, you spend $1,500 on an electric toilet, and then the power goes off.
That's exactly right. So don't do that. Buy a regular toilet where you just flush and the water goes down, and you don't have to worry about whether it's on the Wi-Fi network.
Yeah, just go dig a pit. What's all this newfangled toilet nonsense?
Yeah, and then you grow mushrooms on your own poop there, Dan, at Self-Sustaining Poop Show. All right, folks. We knew that this was going to degenerate into this kind of frivolity at some point. So I'd like to thank Dan for being being the court jester of Wargame, and I'd like to thank Jess for coming by and putting up with this total bullshit.
It's always a joy.
Over an hour now. So thanks very much.
You taught me a lot. I appreciate it.
Everybody have a great night.
Big move. Big win. The moose is loose. Big moves. Big win. The moose is loose. Big moves. Big win. Oh, man.